Hey, yo, I want to talk about time. It's a flat circle, and I don't know what that means. I began production of this video and the script for it on the 25th of September, and this isn't important, but yes, day, month, year. Look at this. Okay. And now look at this. And while I admit that's a little misleading, I still think my point is made. Anyway, the reason that this date is important is because if you look at this video's release date, boom, you'll see how much time has passed already. And normally I wouldn't bother to bring this up, but I'm a cartoon, and while my animations might be all simple and janky, I still take time to put together. And that's worth mentioning because the story I'm going to cover today is big. You saw the thumbnail, you read the title, you probably already know where I'm going with this, but I'm going to talk about the ban announcements for Commander and their potential massive knock-on effects to the entire game, regardless of format. And before we start, I just want to be upfront that my channel isn't a breaking news channel. It can't be by the very nature of it. And I suspect that this story is going to develop as time goes on, so if you're already familiar with this story, as I imagine everyone's going to cover it, and you've come here looking for brand new information, I probably don't have any. In fact, more news will probably have broken after this script is recorded, which, due to the linear nature of time, I won't be able to cover here, because for me, it hasn't happened yet, even if for you it has. Does that make sense? But I have a solution, or more of a compromise really, because at the end of this video I'll insert an extra bit that I'll record as close to the publication date as possible, covering any new developments that may be relevant here. It'll be a compromise though, as the last minuteness of it will mean that the audio won't be as meticulously edited, and instead of my face on screen I'll display a slideshow of Crabs, Magic's best creature type, as I give you the latest updates. I'll call that section the Crabdate, which will hopefully cover all of our bases and correct anything that I said in this video if it's no longer true. Like, maybe they already did exactly this. I doubt it, but let's wait for the Crabdate to find out. Also, up front, I think it's worth just saying that I'm seeing a lot of people being understandably very upset about this news. And while I expect many others will have lost money because of it, I just want to say, don't harass people. Be angry at corporations and organisations, sure, but never the people that make up those governing bodies. I myself have had some choice words for Chris Cox in the past, for instance, and even in this video I'm going to talk about us as a community sending a message to WotC, but I mean metaphorically, as in with our wallets, because I would never dream of doxing or threatening someone, and I would never advocate that any of you do that either. I'm seeing talk about harassing people involved in this story or confronting them in person, and hey, don't. Even if you're upset, don't. Even if you've lost money here, don't. The Magic community is great, and I'd like to think that we're better than that, so don't. I think you have a right to be angry, especially if you lost money, but I think, as I'll get into, that anger should be directed at WotC's business decisions on reprint policy that resulted in the inflation of the secondary market prices of these now banned cards. It's fair to be angry at that, but that anger should be exercised by just not buying expensive cards out of spite anymore. Refuse to play with them. Talk to your friends and invent your own format that uses cards you can all afford. Proxy them. Will that mean potentially no longer playing official formats or tournaments? Yeah, but you'll be better off. And will that negatively affect Magic, doing damage to the game? Yes again, but that's the bed that WotC have been making, and at some point they're going to have to lay in it. And most importantly, you won't have put evil out into the world by harassing someone for just doing their job. We're all Magic the Gathering players here, and the Gathering only works if we remain united as a community. Do not turn on each other. Right, and one last thing before we get to the story proper, I want to make a final detour, and I promise it's worth it. Richard Garfield. The man who created Magic the Gathering, which, for context, is widely considered to be the world's first collectible card game. This man didn't invent a game, he invented a genre. And I bring him up here because he once did this interview, link in the description below, where he said something as the game's creator that I think is worth bearing in mind as we move ahead. Zoom in. And there was a lot of argument within the company that some people said you had to cultivate the speculators. And then later, my intuition is that having a $20 card is about right. And then, these $50 cards, if those $50 cards are being driven by non-play elements, like they're foils or they've got some imprint, that's one thing, I don't really have an opinion about that. But for players, I don't see it as a good thing, I think there has to be a limit. And then, we're not going to be able to choose a point for everybody and everything, but for me, these $40, $50 is going out of the ballpark. Okay, I want you to keep in mind what he said because it's going to be relevant later, but for now, let's talk about the main story. The Commander Banned and Restricted announcement, which for me came out 2 days ago. However, if you look at the small writing just there, you'll see it says, "This is a reproduction of the announcement from the Commander Rules Committee. You can read the complete announcement and explanation at mtgcommander.net. And if we click that link, we get brought to this page, the September 2024 quarterly update. But, just in case you're confused, the reason WotC posted an article that's basically just a copy of the original article by the Commander Rules Committee is because unlike most formats, Commander rules and bannings aren't controlled by WotC. They may print cards for the format, they may make decks for the format, they may ruin entire standard sets trying to entice players of the format, but Commander is not technically theirs, and it's this Rules Committee that has final say over how Commander is handled. But it's also worth noting, as evidenced by the fact that WotC felt comfortable reposting one of their articles, that the two do work closely together and will both often mention how they'll be in communication with each other for sometimes months before a decision is made. So let's zoom in again and have a read of what's caused all this commotion. Cards. Dockside Extortionist is banned. Oof. Jeweled Lotus is banned. Double oof. Mana Crypt is banned, goddamn. And Nadu Winged Wisdom is banned. Well, we can't say we didn't see that one coming. So let's take a look at their reasoning behind these commander bans, and I am sorry, but it's important, so I'm going to read this in its entirety. The philosophy of Commander prioritizes creativity, and one of the ways that we have historically reflected that in the rules and ban list is to encourage a slower pace of game than traditional formats. This gives decks time and space to develop and do different things. I may be misinterpreting that, but it sounds to me like deck homogeny is something they want to avoid. We have a goal to make it easier for players who enjoy slower, more social games to have an environment for them to explore. Commander has always had the potential for someone to get out to a fast start and be the first arch-villain of the game, but that advantage has been balanced by having multiple players gunning for them once it happens. In the past few years, noticeably since Strixhaven, and to butt in again, but I think this Strixhaven line is interesting because it almost feels like they're calling WotC out on the power creep we've seen in recent years. I'm not exactly sure when it was that Hasbro mandated that WotC double their profits each year, but I wouldn't be surprised if Strixhaven was around that time. Anyway. We have seen a pattern of stronger mid-game cards, and that's leading to the player who can skip past their early game being able to snowball their advantage straight through to the win. Occasional games like that are fine, but it shouldn't be common, and we're taking steps to bring that frequency down a bit by banning 3 of the most explosive plays in the format. Okay, good to know what they feel Commander should be. But are these bans really that big of a deal? Well, maybe not long term, we'll have to wait and see, time's a flat circle and all that. But from what it looks like right now, they kind of are a big deal, yeah. And it's not just for Commander, but for the game as a whole. I've heard Magic 30 being brought up as a comparison to the news of these bannings, and it seems many feel that these bannings are worse. Magic 30 was a 4-pack of proxy cards for $1,000. What many felt at the time was WotC's worst display of greed. But you didn't have to buy it, and if you didn't, it would have no financial impact on you. These bannings, however? Well, let's pick Jeweled Lotus for instance. Beautiful card, but let's go to its sales page on TCG Player, link in the description, and oh, what's that little box at the bottom? Let's look closer and, yeah, ouch, that's the market price. Jeweled Lotus was a pushed card, it was basically a Black Lotus for your commander, and because of that and its limited availability, the price went sky high. Many speculators bought it as an investor's item, and many people shelled out the exorbitant prices to buy one to play with. But now it's banned. So the investors are out of pocket, and the regular players spent a lot of money on game pieces they now can't use. The same is true for all of these cards, and the decision to ban them has an impact on the game. It's a feel bad, perhaps one that's enough to push people out of bothering to play at all anymore. Many other people will see this announcement and begin to wonder what's next to be banned. And if those people are investors, how much they stand to lose. And make no mistake, this will affect WotC too, because as I've joked about on the channel before, every set seems to be a commander set now. So if you can expect key cards in every set to get banned in the most popular format, why buy any of them in the first place? So how could this have happened? Why are the price of the cards so expensive in the first place? Didn't Richard Garfield say that cards shouldn't be more than $20? Yes, but remember the first thing he said about, there was a lot of argument within the company. Well, Richard Garfield may have created the game, but he's not in charge of it, and these cards were so expensive because they were designed to be. When Standard was the main way people played, WotC could rely on rotation as a method for players feeling like they had to buy the new cards, thus ensuring a constant flow of income. But as the popularity of non-rotating formats grew, where players aren't necessarily incentivized to always be buying new cards, the types of people Mr. Garfield argued with in the company, it seems, decided to try and turn those non-rotating formats into formats that still require players to buy the latest cards regardless. And they did this via power creep. Modern being the best example of a format that I can think of as one that doesn't technically rotate, but does have new, more powerful cards introduced into it via Modern Horizons, meaning that if you want to remain competitive, you have to go out and buy the latest packs, thus ensuring the constant flow of income for WotC again. But if you're WotC, why limit yourself to targeting the players of only one format in a release when you can include cards designed for other formats in there too? That way, everyone will want to pick up these packs. Who cares what that does to any of the formats along the way as long as you're making money? And why stop there? Because if you make sure that there are fewer numbers of some of these power-crept cards, then their rarity will translate into higher prices on the secondary market, which means people will be willing to spend more on the initial boosters to try and find them, so why not raise the prices of the packs too? Meaning more profit, and even fewer people will be able to afford them, making them rarer still and thus more expensive yet again. Not every set is for you is an infinite money hack. Perpetual growth. What could go wrong? Well, this is what could go wrong. This is what we call a crash. And if Magic's market is about to crash, that's bad for the game. Every tulip eventually rots, every bubble eventually bursts, and there's only so far that WotC can push the limits of greed before players have had enough. And as I mentioned earlier, they do communicate with the rules committee, so there's even speculation that WotC knew these cards were about to get banned, thus ruining their secondary market value, and that's why we saw the recent reprints of Jeweled Lotus in Commander Masters, and Mana Crypt in Collector Boosters of Lost Caverns of Ixalan, giving WotC one last chance to milk the player base of their money by tempting them to buy expensive packs to find these cards before their secondary market value crashes. And whether that's true or not doesn't matter as much as the fact that people's opinions of Magic has soured so much that they're willing to believe WotC would stoop so low. Not a healthy sign for the game. And even I must admit that seeing this ban announcement came out after the sale of Festival in a Box 2024, which in my opinion had its price bumped up to include things like those Commander Master and Ixalan collector boosters, has me raising an eyebrow too. Check out this video if you don't know what Festival in a Box is and would like to see a very sweary review of it. But here's one thing that perhaps might surprise or even upset you, because you know what? The Commander Rules Committee is right. These 4 cards suck and they should be banned. Power creep is bad. Not only does it force players to spend money on cards to remain competitive, but those new cards may replace old favourites someone has a personal attachment to. And having to choose between not playing with the cards that you like or constantly losing isn't a fun choice. And power creep leads to faster, less interactive games which in my opinion just aren't as tactical or fun. Also, the generically good auto-include nature of some of these cards leads to deck homogeny where everyone's running Command Tower, Arcane Signet, and yes, I'm getting to it, Sol Ring in every deck because they're just the best cards to run. And that's boring. Who wants to play a game that's boring? Let's look at that ban announcement again and zoom in, because if we look at this section, it goes into details as to the specific reasons for each card's banning. But in short, snowballing, 5 mana on turn 2, and snowballing again. But as they point out, that does raise an interesting question, and if we scroll down, they say, we should also talk about the elephant in the room. We're not banning Sol Ring. Okay, because as they go on to explain, Sol Ring is the iconic card of the format, then it's sufficiently tied to the identity of the format, and banning Sol Ring would be fundamentally changing the identity of the format, and then we aren't trying to eliminate all explosive starts. Okay, but isn't Sol Ring just as bad for snowballing, if not worse than all the previous cards? Yes, based on the criteria we've talked about here, it would be banned. Okay, come closer. No, closer. Do it. I mean it. Do it. Ban Sol Ring. Now, you may ask, why? Sol Ring's not massively expensive like most of the other cards, but remember, price isn't the reason these cards got banned. These cards were pricey because they were power crept enough to need to be banned in the first place, not the other way around. So Sol Ring might be cheaper, but it's just as bad, if not worse, in terms of power. At least you have to sacrifice Jeweled Lotus to use it. Sol Ring might stick around the entire game. So when it comes to the idea of banning it, they said it themselves. Yes, based on the criteria we've talked about here, it would be banned. But I have another criteria. I'm sick of it. I said these generically good cards wind up in every deck, and for no card is that more true than of Sol Ring. It's in every starter deck, which I do appreciate because it brings the price down, but familiarity breeds contempt. And honestly, do we really need Sol Ring? Are you sure this 1 in a deck of 100 card is so integral to an entire format that we have to have it? I thought the philosophy of Commander prioritizes creativity. Isn't everyone running Sol Ring the antithesis of that philosophy? This gives decks time and space to develop and do different things. There are other, more diverse and unique mana rocks. Wouldn't the game be more interesting if the Sol Ring slot in every deck was replaced by one of the many different ones of these? And yeah, they may not be as fast to get out, but don't we have a goal to make it easier for players who enjoy slower, more social games? Hashtag ban Sol Ring is not the same as saying ban ramp or fast starts. It's just pointing out that if everyone's got a Sol Ring, they kind of cancel each other out, making Commander a 99 card format. And I think that's a lot less interesting. Plus, banning it has the added benefit that WotC know Commander is the most popular format, and they know they don't control it. I for one certainly feel some of WotC's decisions lately aren't what's best for the player base, but what's best for their bottom line. So potentially already in line with the Rules Committee's thinking. Again, I'm referencing that Strixhaven line. I think banning Sol Ring would be the ultimate way to send WotC a message that we're sick of power creep in these constantly pushed cards. And maybe remind them who they make their money from and that the player base are the masters they should serve, not the shareholders. Ban Sol Ring. But I hear you, Commander Rules Committee, you don't want to. It would be a foundational change and I understand your reasoning. So, for the second time this video, I have a compromise. Because do you know what card I'm not sick of? Traveler's Amulet. It's ramp, like Sol Ring. It's a colourless artifact like Sol Ring. It's not as powerful, so unlike Sol Ring it doesn't go in every deck. But if it did, I'm not sure I'd get sick of it. For one simple reason. This is what a Traveler's Amulet looks like from Amonkhet. This is what a Traveler's Amulet looks like from Ixalan. Here's two different Traveler's Amulets from Theros. And back to my favourite, which is the Traveler's Amulet from Innistrad. The fact that the flavour of each of these cards tells you something about the lore and world building, which in turn helps cement the individuality of a deck, I think it's fantastic. And it circumnavigates the potential homogeneous nature of the card's inclusion. I love it. I want to go to that Richard Garfield interview again, because there's one other thing he said I want to remind you of. These $50 cards, if these $50 cards are being driven by non-play elements like they're foils or they've got some imprint, that's one thing I don't really have an opinion about that. Art and flavour is a non-play element. And yes, Sol Ring's overpowered and so should in theory be banned. Plus, I'm just so sick of seeing this art in every deck. But if we're being realistic and banning it's not something that's likely to actually happen, then I'd at least like to see Sol Ring get the Traveler's Amulet treatment. Which, good news, has already somewhat started to happen. Here's the Sol Rings from the Bloomburrow and Duskmourn commander decks. Here's the ones from the Fallout and Lord of the Rings commander decks. The Outlaws of Thunder Junction and Doctor Who commander decks. Here's two from the Warhammer commander decks. And here's another two from the other Warhammer commander decks. So they can do it. But if Sol Ring really has to be in every single deck, then I would want to see more of these variations with different in-universe art. And, importantly, not just printed in the pre-con decks, but collector boosters too. Maybe even play boosters to keep the price down for the versions that have art depicting planes like Amonkhet and Ixalan. Give me an Innistrad Sol Ring. And WotC, if you want to make money, you can still sell versions like this which are extra wild designs or have different foiling or whatever, and so presumably are super rare and super pricey on the secondary market. Because as Richard Garfield said, it's okay if the price is driven by non-play elements. But don't push that too far either, because remember what can happen. And I hope you learned a lesson about power creep here as well, because if you're not willing to learn that lesson and you think continuing to manipulate the secondary market through increased power and rarity is a good idea, then I say ban Sol Ring. Because if WotC are too consumed with making money to bother with caring for the health of the game, then I guess we're just going to have to do it ourselves. And like the Commander Rules Committee, send a clear message that power creep isn't something we want in our games. Again, through your purchasing power, not through harassment. And WotC, one last thing, if you want to unlock recurring spending, and you can't do that on non-rotating formats without power creep, then maybe, here's an idea, hashtag fix standard. It worked once! Come check me out on Patreon, I've got a behind the scenes blog, we have weekly opinion polls about interesting aspects of the game, and you can get your name credited on screen at the end of my videos too. This was a very long video, I'm losing my voice, but now for the Crabdate. Hi, and welcome to the Crabdate, and what an absolutely insane week it's been. And a good example as to the downsides of scripted videos rather than being a reactionary YouTuber, because, oh, just so much of this video isn't applicable anymore. I guess we'll start with the facts. It is currently Tuesday, the 1st of October, which, as you're probably aware, is still several days earlier than the video is going to go live on YouTube. I'll explain that in a moment. But before we get to that, let's do a rundown of the facts that I think are applicable in as best a chronological order as I can think of. Starting with the death threats, and it's really disappointing to see how bad it got, actually. One person had to step down from their position within the Rules Committee itself. Someone else had an endless wave of hate thrown at them, and then it turned out afterwards that they didn't even vote in favour of the cards being banned in the first place. which just kind of goes to show that the hate was just being spewed in all directions to everyone even remotely associated with the Rules Committee, which, you know, whether they voted for the cards to be banned or not really doesn't matter. They shouldn't be having to deal with that. That's atrocious. They put out a statement, which I'm going to show on screen. I won't forget the crabs. Kind of going through a lot of what happened and updating people. There is some speculation, or not even speculation, there are dickheads, I'm going to say, online who are like, oh, the death threats didn't happen. But no, I fully believe that they did. The internet is a hideous place at times. And from what I've seen, that was already planning to be the case from some people anyway, that they were going to be harassing those poor people. So, yeah. But as for the statement itself, I read through it. I don't know that there's anything particularly applicable to anything that I said in the video here. Although I suppose they did touch on at one point how much communication they have with WotC. And that's another thing that has had rampant speculation around it. There's rumours that some buyers had started to already preemptively refuse to buy cards like Jeweled Lotus before the ban was announced, which is, it's collusion, but also I don't know that there's any evidence for any of that, so that's just hearsay. Many other people are talking about how certain cards have begun to skyrocket in price as a result. Mana Vault seems to be one of the ones that is becoming the priciest, so okay. And then the worst of it, the death threats got so bad that the Rules Committee decided to hand the power of Commander over to WotC. WotC themselves put out a statement, which again I will show on screen, with crabs. And this sucks. This is bad. This is really bad. This is so bad that I didn't even foresee it being an outcome. I don't often in my videos tell you exactly what I think, because I believe it would be too easy for that to translate to me telling you what to think, which is not something I want to do. And so often I will just kind of present the information biasedly, admittedly, because I've got an opinion, but I won't connect all the dots. I'll kind of leave that up to you. But right now I am going to kind of tell you what the point of this video was that you've just watched. And it was in essence that, hey, the Rules Committee are players like us. Commander was a casual format that got created by like judges just playing together. That's why it was called originally Elder Dragon Highlander, because even though that's a copyrighted name, they thought it was cool. Because, you know, like the Highlander movies, there can be only one. And so the Rules Committee they're us. They're just people that play the game. And I think that WotC having control over the format is bad, because they have control over the other formats and they're not particularly great at managing them. As examples, look at the garbage fire that is Standard lately. And things like Nardu, I seem to remember there was a press statement they put out that said something about how, you know, Nardu's really bad in Modern, but we're not going to ban it because... Oh no, or am I confusing that with the One Ring? Because I think there are at least those two cards are causing a problem in certain formats, and WotC just like, no, we want to sell the cards, we're not going to ban them. So I'm fully in support of a Rules Committee being a separate entity outside of the sphere of control of WotC, being able to say things like, no, we're going to ban these cards because you're pushing it, that you're trying to transform this format into something that it isn't. And it's not for the benefit of the players, it's for the shareholders, and that's bad. So the point of this video was, hey, the Rules Committee are right, actually, to ban these cards because they are bad. And more importantly, it's important that they keep their autonomy from WotC so that we have someone looking out for the players, at least. Well, the death threats got so bad that they've disbanded and have handed control of the format over to WotC, and I think that that's going to go poorly. I think for a month they'll do a good job. We might see some bannings that people have been asking for, or some rules changes that people have been asking for, just to kind of just so that they can change the narrative of, oh, it's good actually that WotC have control of Commander. But I don't think that's going to last. I think that chase cards are going to continue to be printed, and the power level is going to continue to rise. In the statement that they put out, they mentioned something about like tiers and power levels, and so, this card's a power level 4. And first of all, I think that's nonsense, because a lot of the power of cards comes from how they interact with the other cards in the deck. Only very rarely is it one card that makes, that is strong on its own. And secondly, if we're considering cards like Jeweled Lotus that need to be banned, I would still say that Sol Ring then is up there. And so are we going to say that because Sol Ring is in every starter deck, that means that every starter deck is the max power of commander deck that you can get? Because I doubt it. I think I'm going to have to collate my thoughts and do another follow-up video on this, which I wasn't intending to do. Oh, and as I mentioned at the start of the Crabdate, the reason that I'm recording this now on the 1st of October, which is still days before the video's set to come out on YouTube, is because it wasn't until after I'd written and recorded the script that I'd remembered that one of my Patreon tiers is that for my patrons, they get early access to audio-only versions of the videos. So I have to do this now because that is going to go live tomorrow afternoon. So I believe that's all of the news. We've still got several days left before this video goes live on YouTube, so which will be after it's gone up on my Patreon. So if there is anything more to be crab-dated, then I'm going to put that here. But if you're hearing me speak, then there wasn't anything new, or whatever else has come out, I've decided to save for the next video, which will be Monday again. God, time. I just don't have enough of it. But yeah, this has sucked. This has been a really rough week. I feel for everyone who's not even just in the rules committee, but anyone who's connected to it that has had any kind of hate thrown their way. Not just the death threats, which are obviously abhorrent, but any kind of online harassment isn't acceptable. So that is really disappointing to see from us as a player base. And now we have let WotC consolidate power because of it. And that is not on the rules committee. Do not be angry at them. That is on all of the people that sent them even unkind words. And from my perspective, it was really frustrating to be working on a video that's the core message is, hey, we're all players of this game, but it's good to ban these cards because we shouldn't let WotC be in total control of this format. Hey, we should support the rules committee. And then to see that even before it's published, no, that's not going to be the case anymore. That's really disheartening. But hey, that's the Crabdate. So consider yourself Crabdated. Thank you very much for watching this video, and thank you to everyone that supports me, like James Diamond, Eggboy the Particle that permeates all existence, and the rest of my patrons whose names are on screen now. I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this video, me and my Patreon page, where you can get your name credited on screen too. Check it out in the link in the description below. Hit the like button, leave a comment, install an ad block, that's become relevant lately apparently. Most importantly, subscribe and share this video with a friend. Hit the notification bell and do all those things the algorithm loves. If you agree or disagree with any of my points, I am losing my voice, this was a very long video, or if you want to see me do a video on another subject, let me know. Also let me know what you thought about the Crabdate, maybe that will be something I do in the future. Well, this is a very long outro, isn't it? Any which way, I'll see you next time.